Hi, I'm Lindsay Della. I'm an associate professor at the University of Louisville in the Department of Communication, and I, along with my colleague Mary Ashlock, have been working with the Louisville Metro Housing Authority since March of 2024 to help support strategic decision making with respect to the future of Dosker Manor, which is an aging public housing site in downtown Louisville. I'm going to talk today about the first sort of half of a PowerPoint presentation that has been put together to describe what has been accomplished so far in the strategic planning process and what our plans are for the future of Dosker Manor and its residents. I will talk through kind of what we have done in terms of resident feedback, needs assessment of what the residents might need and may not have access to yet, and then talk just a little bit about future planning for Dosker. The second portion of this PowerPoint presentation will be talked through by Elizabeth Strojan, the Executive Director of LMHA, and she'll give you a better sense of what the plans are in terms of relocation or phase one relocation for Dosker Manor. So just a brief comment about the current situation at Dosker. This is a really difficult to manage site, and actually, there are three main things happening at Dosker that are making it untenable to manage at the time. Currently, there are some serious capital needs that are required of the buildings themselves. The buildings they have part of the facade that is falling off. They have major plumbing issues, and there's just some challenges with the building and its systems. The systems are old, the buildings are old, and it's very difficult to fix them entirely. At the moment, they're kind of band-aid fixes that are happening, but they're not long-term solutions. It's also a diverse population in the sense of the types of supportive services that the residents of Dosker Manor actually need for their daily lives. And you'll notice also, we'll show you a slide of kind of the distribution of folks who live at Dosker Manor, but there's a significant portion of residents who are older. They're 60 years old or older, and so that also presents some specific supportive services and needs for accessing healthcare that might not be present in other populations of people. The site itself is located downtown. It's flanked on one side by the University of Louisville's Health Sciences campus, and Norton's hospital system has a site down there as well. So all the medical things that are downtown are on the south side of the Dosker Manor site. And on the north side of the Dosker Manor site is the Wayside Christian Mission, which services a lot of homeless folks. And so there's a lot of foot traffic back and forth in and around the Dosker site, which has made it a very difficult to secure site. So right now, security challenges are definitely an issue at the building itself. So all three of these things together have made this property become kind of an untenable property to manage overall. And the current plan is to take down or knock down the buildings that are on the Dosker site and rebuild in the future. But as we were working through understanding what the plan should be and what this process would entail, we needed to have a better understanding of who's living at Dosker, as well as what is it that they need and would like to see happen in the future. So I'm going to give you just a brief overview of the Dosker resident characteristics and then talk to you about a needs assessment that we conducted back in the beginning of May. In terms of the folks who live at Dosker Manor, there are just under 600 residents that live at Dosker. And like I said before, a good portion of them are aging. They are 60 years old or older. And we do have slightly more men who live at Dosker Manor than women. But those who are under 60 years old more than likely are managing a disability in their daily lives. So this next chart kind of shows the age and disability status of the folks who live at Dosker. And the two columns on the left are the people who are between the ages of 18 and 59. And so you can see fewer than 50 folks in that age group indicate they do not have a disability, and over 150, about 175 folks in that age group indicate they do have some sort of disability status. And then on the right-hand side of the chart, this is the 60 and above group of folks. And a good portion of them also indicate that they themselves, even though they're over 60, they also have a disability that they're dealing with. There are three buildings on the Dosker Manor site. There's building A, B, and C. And for the most part, most buildings contain one-bedroom apartments. So you can see a 456 one-bedroom apartments across these three buildings. There are just a couple of efficiencies and just under 20 two-bedroom apartments. So predominantly we're seeing one-bedroom apartments in all three buildings. Building A is the largest building, and it has 223 occupied units. Some folks require a live-in aid, and so you'll notice that there are actually more residents than units. And some people do have a spouse who's living with them. So occasionally you'll see two people in a unit as opposed to one. But you do kind of get a sense that unit or building A actually houses a larger portion of folks who are under 60 years old. So this is the 18 to 59 group. And yet they do have disability needs. 150 residents in building A have disability status. So building A is one of the largest buildings and probably the most challenging to deal with in the sense that it does have a diversity of people who have different needs. So I want to talk through the resident survey needs assessment just to give you a sense of what we did hear from people about what their needs were. We also asked them about what they liked about living at Dosker Manor versus what they didn't like about living at Dosker Manor. And at the time, we weren't sure what was happening with Dosker, so we did kind of explain, though, no matter what happens, whether they decide to tear things down or try to repair things, they're going to need to move folks out of their units in order to do any of that. So we did talk through relocation ideas and got feedback from them about where they might like to relocate to when the time came. So like I mentioned, we collected data at the beginning of May between May 6th and May 10th. And this is just a quick little chart of how many folks kind of came in and completed a survey on the different days of that week. We did collect data at different times of the day. So we were there from noon until maybe about 4 o'clock during the day. And then for folks who had a job and who weren't able to get there until after their job in the evening hours, we collected data from 5 to 7 o'clock at night as well. I collected data along with my colleague Mary Ashlock and folks from LMHA. So we all were there interacting with the residents. They saw us, they talked to us. The data collection on average took about an hour for people to complete. We did offer them a gift card for their participation. And I think the word got out by Tuesday because we saw quite a few people come and complete the survey on Tuesday. And then we dropped off again towards the end of the week. But overall, we had good response rate. A third of folks who live at Dosker Manor completed the survey. And that's, I think, saying something about their desire to be heard, but also the need for them to communicate what was going on at Dosker and to talk to somebody who was listening to them. And like I mentioned, the actual interviews themselves took about an hour to complete. So these folks are really invested in giving their feedback and wanted us to hear what they had to say. That 33% of households represented about 193 households overall. So when we asked people why they wanted to leave Dosker Manor or move out of Dosker Manor, most folks said to get a better apartment, and they also indicated they wanted to live in a safer area or neighborhood. One of the also popular responses was to get better access to groceries or, just be able to go shopping more easily. So these are kind of the top three reasons why people wanted to move away from Dosker Manor. I do want to just point out, as you're looking at the percentages here, you'll notice that 64% of folks indicated that they wanted to move to get a better apartment, and then 59% said they wanted to live in a safer area or neighborhood. And of course, if you just add those two percentages together, it adds up to more than 100%. And that is because we allowed people to choose more than one option. So some folks might have chosen all three of these options. And so you'll see across many of these questions that we did allow for multiple responses. The reasons why people would want to stay at or near Dosker were kind of dominated by the close relation to and the close proximity of their healthcare providers. You can just walk across the street and you have access to the U of L Health Sciences campus and the Norton healthcare there at Norton Hospital. And so it was very easy for them to access the healthcare that they needed. Remember, this is an older population and or a population with specific disabilities that might need consistent healthcare attention. They also indicated that they like the conveniences of a downtown area, but not nearly in as much of a strong fashion as just being near the healthcare providers. We do know that there's bus transportation to and from Dosker that runs pretty regularly on TARC, so that's one of the conveniences of being downtown. And then other people voiced a concern that if they had to go somewhere else, the rent for them might increase and that their apartment might become unaffordable. So they like the fact that their Dosker apartment was still affordable for them. We did ask a self-report about whether anybody in the household had a disability, a physical or mobility disability, which might have included using a wheelchair or needing to walk with a walker or a cane, or having some sort of sight or hearing impairment or some other disability. And about half of the folks indicated that yes, they did have a disability that they were managing in their lives. And so we followed that question up with questions about what kinds of services do you need, but you do not currently have. So we asked people about services that they did currently have, and then things that maybe they felt they needed, but they weren't able to access yet, or they wished they were able to access in the future. And so I've sort of presented these in order from sort of the most popular response to ones that weren't quite as popular. But you can see here that assistance with paying bills and handling their finances, almost a third of folks who responded to the survey indicated that that was something that they felt they needed, but they did not have. And then followed closely by about 28% of people who indicated case management services or home visits from a social worker would be really helpful to have, but they did not have it at the moment. And then there was about 25% or 23% who indicated that they wish they had better or more frequent access to treatment or medications. 22% indicated that they needed access to mental health counseling, but they did not have it. And then less frequently, but still mentioned occasionally, were things like needing help with legal business, legal paperwork like power of attorney, needing help with keeping their home tidy or preparing their meals or doing their laundry. And then finally, 12% indicated that they needed some in-home medical assistance, which might have included things like physical therapy or nursing care, or help with bathing or dressing themselves. Then we did talk with them, like I mentioned, about if they need to move out, where would they prefer to move to? And so again, they were allowed to choose more than one option here. And so you can kind of see that for the most part, the first three options had a fairly similar sort of selection rate in the sense that a privately owned apartment or house elsewhere in Louisville using a Section 8 voucher was a pretty popular option. 51% chose that. 50% indicated Hope 6 or a choice neighborhood community would be nice. And 47% indicated that, if Dosker Manor were rebuilt or renovated, they would like to stay there, or at least at nearby. So some of them did mention Liberty Green next door as a place where they thought they could be comfortable. They're not too far away from healthcare providers and that transportation and things like that. So you can kind of see the top three options there. Moving to another area of Louisville was not quite as popular, even if it were a newly built or renovated apartment somewhere else in Louisville. Only 40% of folks indicated that they would like to move to that type of situation. So that kind of wraps up the overview of our needs assessment survey findings. But I did want to talk just for a moment about what is happening into the future and planning for the future. And then I know Elizabeth is going to continue that discussion when she presents the second portion of this PowerPoint presentation. But I know LMHA has since announced that the plan for Dosker Manor is to tear down the current buildings and to rebuild on the site. The site itself is going to expand a little bit north. And so at the moment, the process that we're working through is how to relocate the Dosker residents, those of whom are pretty unique cases in many senses. So we want to make sure that we're continuing to provide supportive services and maybe even be able to offer some of those services that they said that they needed, but they don't have yet. And do all of this while we're relocating people to a new place. Dosker residents will have the first option to come back to Dosker once it's rebuilt, but that will be a little while. And we want to make sure that the relocation move is smooth. So the relocation is going to begin with Building A, and the process is going to transpire over the next 12 to 18 months. While people are still living in Dosker Manor during the process of moving people out, LMHA wants to continue to make the necessary sort of life and safety physical improvements needed at the buildings and to help provide security measures. That needs assessment that I was talking you through did find that there were some pretty grave security concerns and some violent crime that was happening at the site. So they're really working to step up the security measures on site, but also offer some case management through LMHA staff and by working with Louisville Metro Government's Office of Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods. And then as we're going through this process, we want to make sure that the people who are living at Dosker don't just feel like LMHA is coming in and doing things to them. We wanted to gather their feedback, make sure that they felt that they were heard, make sure that they felt that their voices were represented in this process. And so you saw that we had the needs assessment survey that was conducted. We also have had some other opportunities for residents to take part in the planning efforts overall. We have conducted a focus group where people have come in and talked about, what would they desire to have in a newly rebuilt type of apartment. apartment situation at Dosker. So we are doing our best to make sure that we're listening to what people are in need of in the current moment, but also what they would like to see happen with Dosker in the future. This is all I'm going to talk about for today in the presentation of this PowerPoint. And Elizabeth is going to take over and talk you through the second half of the PowerPoint. But we look forward to talking to you about the process as we move through it into the future.
Hey everyone, this is Elizabeth Strojan, the Executive Director of the Louisville Metro Housing Authority. I'm going to finish out this presentation by giving you some details on the logistics for this relocation. I'm going to tell you about the timing, the team we're building to support these efforts, rehousing options for Dosker residents, resident right to return for replacement housing at Dosker, and the relocation benefits we're making available. Let's get started with this relocation timeline. This is going to be a 3-phase relocation effort. We're hoping to complete this within the next 12 to 18 months. We're doing it on this timeline because we really want to get people out as quickly as we possibly can so that they're rehoused in better housing situations than they're currently in. And we know that once we start, it's important to relocate everyone from the property pretty quickly. We're starting phase 1 with residents of the A building, and right now, we are starting with volunteers from the A building. We're hoping to start moving people as quickly as possible this month, July of 2024. We will then move on to the B building, beginning their relocation this fall and winter of 2024. The C building will be relocated in the winter and spring of 2025. We are hiring additional supportive team members to make sure that residents have everything they need to make this relocation as smooth as possible. We're bringing on 4 relocation assistants to help administer individualized relocation surveys. Those surveys are going to match what the residents prefer with available housing options. The relocation assistants are also going to provide mobility support services to help residents get where they need to be. They'll be distributing important relocation information and answering questions about the overall relocation plan for Dosker Manor. Additionally, we're hiring a community supportive services coordinator and housing navigators to help the Dosker Manor residents who opt for a housing choice voucher. This team is going to be assisting residents in overcoming barriers to securing housing, locating and applying for housing for those choosing a housing choice voucher or seeking a project-based voucher unit. They'll be advising residents on tenant rights and responsibilities, and they'll be working with residents after their move to ensure a smooth transition. I want to emphasize that we're looking at this as a very long-term effort. Just because someone from Dosker Manor moves out of Dosker Manor into someplace else doesn't mean we're finished. We are going to continue to support residents after their moves, and this team is going to be a key part of that. LMHA is partnering with Louisville Metro Government's Office for Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods to bring case management services on site to Dosker Manor. We know that residents of Dosker Manor have needed additional supportive services for a while, and as we're embarking on a very complicated relocation effort, we want to make sure that we have a higher level of case management supportive services on site at Dosker Manor. These folks are going to help with initial contact and intake for Dosker Manor residents, and they're going to be able to help us provide ongoing support, connection, and revision of these goals as folks move into new locations. A lot of folks want to know, where are all these people going to move? So I'll walk you through some of our initial relocation choices. We're projecting that we will have enough units, more than enough units, to offer Dosker relocatees over the next 18 months. And this is going to be through a combination of vouchers, public housing units, and partner units. So for folks opting for a Section 8 voucher, as I've mentioned, we'll have a team assembled to help people make the transition from a public housing tenant to a voucher holder. People who are eligible for Section 8's homeownership program, we'll work with them to make that a possibility as well. A lot of Dosker residents are going to be interested in moving into another LMHA public housing unit, and this will include our scatter sites. We also partner with a number of affordable housing developers through our project-based voucher program. Those vouchers are attached to a unit and they help with the overall financing of the development. So we're asking our partners that we've helped finance through our project-based voucher program to make a portion of those units available to Dosker Manor residents. Additionally, some residents might be interested in getting off of LMHA assistance and moving into an unsubsidized unit or becoming homeownership or homeowners. So we will work with folks to make any and all resources available to them should they choose that option. We do anticipate that most Dosker residents will opt for either a public housing unit within LMHA's portfolio or some type of Section 8 voucher, whether that's tenant-based or project-based. So we are updating our documents as necessary now to make sure that there's no wait for Dosker residents to move into an available public housing unit and that they go to the top of the list for Section 8 vouchers. We should be able to make vouchers available for everybody who's interested in that option as quickly as possible. As we've talked about publicly several times now, LMHA is also working to increase the supply of affordable housing throughout the city of Louisville. We, of course, want to replace every single unit at Dosker Manor, and we're looking to build even more than that. So we've issued a request for qualifications for developer partners for new development and replacement housing for LMHA's legacy sites. Those responses are rolling in. We've also put out a request for proposals for affordable housing developers to access project-based vouchers. We're asking all of these folks, whether you're working with us to build new on-site or off-site, or supporting your existing housing with our project-based vouchers, we're asking everyone to make a portion of those units available for Dosker Manor residents. So this is how we are going to not only make sure that everybody has a unit to move into now from Dosker Manor, but we are looking to increase the supply of deeply affordable housing throughout the city of Louisville. So for all of this housing that we're going to build back on the Dosker Manor site, across the street from Dosker Manor at the First Link site, and additional properties nearby and also within LMHA's control throughout the county, Dosker Manor residents will have an admissions preference for on and off-site replacement units during initial lease-up. So we know that people are very concerned about the residents who would like to return to the Dosker Manor site or nearby. And we're making all the documents say this, Dosker Manor residents will have a preference to move back. Now let's get to the fun part, the moving benefits that we are providing for Dosker Manor residents. First and foremost, LMHA will cover the moving cost for residents moving out of Dosker Manor. We are contracting with moving companies and we are paying for that. So for residents, especially those who need a little more support, they can work with our moving company that will help them pack, move their belongings, and unpack at their new site. And if you choose that option, you also get a $100 one-time fixed payment. Alternatively, you can pay for the move on your own and you'll be eligible for a one-time fixed payment for self-moves. So those amounts are as follows. For Dosker residents living in a studio or efficiency unit, that's $900. For people in a one-bedroom unit, we'll offer us $1,100, and a two-bedroom unit gets $1,300. So again, either way, whether residents choose to move themselves or take a payment, we are covering the cost of moving. Additionally, if any of these costs are an obstacle or something that residents have to deal with as they're moving out, LMHA will reimburse for credit check fees, utility deposits, and security deposits if those are required. On top of those costs, we're also offering the following services to make this as smooth as possible for Dosker residents. We're hosting relocation meetings, and we're also putting a lot of information out there in other ways, such as videos and notices in writing, so that residents have the information about what's happening with this relocation effort. We are offering personal mobility counseling to make sure each resident is aware of the rehousing options available to them, and we're doing our best to match things with folks. We will be offering transportation assistance and special tours of potential housing options. So for Dosker residents who need to take a look at a particular LMHA site before they know they want to move there, for example, we will set all of that up for them. And as I've mentioned, we're offering enhanced supportive services through this process, through our own staffing, as well as partnering with as many partners as we possibly can. Thank you all for your attention and your interest in the Dosker Manor relocation. We look forward to this being as smooth a process as we can possibly do. And I personally am very excited for the day when every resident of Dosker Manor has a much better housing opportunity. Thank you.